There are few things more 1990 than a Todd McFarlane drawn issue of Spider-Man. And this is such a cool comic because the stuff that's inside of it is amazing. What's going on, everybody? I'm Jay. Welcome to Square Pegs. Video game advertising has fascinated me for years. It's always been something I love, whether it was the ridiculously raunchy stuff of the 80s, the fantastic over-the-top action-oriented stuff of the 90s, to transitioning into creative video commercials and things like that during pro wrestling in the late 1990s. Video game commercials and advertisements have always been something I love. Today we're looking at every video game advertisement from this issue of Spider-Man, number 3 from 1990. Up first, a game I've actually never played. You're going to get my thoughts on this as we're playing it right now, but we are looking at Mission Impossible from Ultra, which is, of course, Konami. Let's see how this one is. So of all the games that I was going to play today, I did not expect this one to probably be one of the better ones because, I mean, let's be honest, it's a licensed NES game. You're kind of taking your life into your own hands on these games. And despite the fact that I do love my licensed video games, looking at Mission Impossible, it wasn't something I thought was going to be a fun game, but I'll be damned if this isn't really enjoyable, if a bit confusing. It's a top-down game where you're moving through a city and you're fighting the bad guys, but you need to be sure that you are only attacking actual enemies, because if you attack a citizen, you're going to lose a life, which I've discovered pretty quickly. This is a really neat title, though. It's a clever combat system, and it's something where I look at it and I kind of wonder why Mission Impossible didn't become a bigger franchise for video games. It's kind of a shame, really, but this NES game, pretty fun. Legit. This is the most 90s two-page spread ever. McFarlane was a wizard when it came to Spider-Man and just drawing the scenes. And it's kind of funny because this launched at the same time as X-Force, which was drawn by Rob Liefeld, who had his own distinct style. And I won't say anything negative about Rob here. Rob's done a lot of good for the industry, but it's something where the two of them just burst on the scene and really changed the way that comics were perceived. Between Todd McFarlane and Rob Liefeld and Jim Lee, they completely transformed the industry. So much so that those three left with Eric Larson, Whilce Portacio, John Silvestri, and they left to form Image Comics, which is where things like Savage Dragon and Spawn, and eventually The Walking Dead, I believe, ended up. But this is our next game now. This is not Zombies or Spawn or Walking Dead or anything like that. This is one of my favorite games from Taito. This is Wrath of the Black Manta. And what a fantastic ad. We actually have a ninja jumping out and throwing a ninja star. That is so cool. It's just fantastic. And that's really neat. You could actually win a Wrath of the Black Manta poster. How cool is that? I loved stuff like that. Being able to get these different giveaways and contests and things like that in comics were just amazing. I literally just talked about Wrath of the Manta a couple of weeks ago when I did my Taito ranking video and had no idea I was going to be doing this one at the time. And I don't actually ever remember there being ads, but clearly there were. And this one's kind of special because, I mean, you guys know I love the game. I ranked it as an S. It's one of my favorite NES games. And I just love this ad. This is everything that late 1980s video games advertisement was meant to be. It's simple but fun. It's got real-life graphics on it as opposed to a cartoon. It's actually got a real-life actor on there. I love the contest, giving away a Wrath of the Black Manta poster. I think that's amazing. This just speaks to me. I think this is an awesome ad, and what a great game. Wrath of the Black Manta, if you've never played it, is something you need to put on your list sooner than later, because I think you will be pleasantly surprised with how much fun it is. Okay, this one's awesome. This is actually what made me want a TurboGrafx 16 when I was younger. I was an avid comic collector, but my gaming at this time was pretty much limited to the NES and the Sega Genesis. But stuff like this comic 2-page spread featuring Bonk's adventure on the TurboGrafx 16 just sang. It's just so cool, right? I wish I knew who drew this because it's fun, right? It's just lighthearted and happy, and that's really awesome. It's a little bit of a juxtaposition. You've got this in the middle of this comic, followed by this, where Spidey is in the sewers looking horrible. Oh man, I really, really wish I knew who drew this. I did a little bit of research and I wasn't able to come up with anything, but this is just such a wonderful way to sell a video game in a comic book. Putting it in a version of sequential art right in the middle of your comic book is brilliant. And what a way to get Bonk recognized in the TurboGrafx 16. This was a way to tap into the youth of America. They were all reading this issue of Spider-Man. Everyone was into this issue of Spider-Man if they read comics, and that's your target audience for video games. It was a really accessible and fun advertisement, and it made the game seem interesting. And the game was fantastic and still is to this day. It's a signature experience for anyone that's never played it. You really need to, because it just shows what Hudson and what TurboGrafx was able to do, because, God, that machine was just incredible. It's something that I really want to get into collecting for that I haven't really taken the time to do yet, but I think next year that might change. It's just a really, really neat console and something that plays such incredible games. Awesome. Sci-Fi Book Club, not a video game advertisement, but really neat. Does anyone remember Columbia House or BMG Records? Up next, 2 games for the Game Boy. Wizards and Warriors Fortress of Fear, and the amazing Spider-Man. He's a menace, the Spider-Man! Wizards and Warriors Fortress of Fear is the first of 2 rare games in this video. And I'm gonna be honest with you, they made a faithful adaptation of Wizards and Warriors for the Game Boy. It doesn't feel cramped like a lot of classic Game Boy games can, where you're deathly aware of how small the screen is. This actually feels really large. And I think that's because you're able to go forward and backward in the level rather than just being forced to go sequentially forward. It's something that makes the game feel bigger, and I think that's pretty awesome. This is signature Rare style. The game is a little bit goofy, a little bit silly, like the big zap when you hit something is very, very rare. But it's got that Wizards and Warriors challenge that I think really made the game fun. It's not a simple game to get through. You're definitely going to have some difficulty with it. Some of the jumps are a little bit iffy, but honestly, for a Game Boy game, I think this is pretty fantastic. The Amazing Spider-Man was not a game I expected to be any good. I'm going to be completely upfront and honest with you, and I don't know why, because when I booted it up and I saw that it had the Rare name on it, I should have expected a pretty good game at the very least. And it's a pretty good game. This reminds me very much of Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Fall of the Foot Clan. It feels like that same style of side-scrolling beat-em-up. There's some tricks to it, like being able to shoot the webs. You have to press up and the attack button. In order to web swing, you actually have to jump and then jump again to be closer to the ceiling, but it's not unintuitive. It just took a second to figure it out. And if this was something I had the instruction manual for, this would have been super easy, but I just really enjoyed this. I think this is a really fun, simple, accessible side-scrolling beat-em-up, and once again, Rare proving that they're able to make a great game. Now, I will say, this one does feel a little cramped. You only go left to right. You aren't able to go backwards in the level, but it's still really fun, and, I mean, who's going to complain about getting a video game for Webhead in a comic book about Spider-Man? Ooh. Craven, seeing better days here. I can see through your head! And the final game advertised in this issue of Spider-Man? Total Recall. Now, Total Recall breaks the streak. So, every game in this comic so far had been, at the very least, fun to play. And then we get to Total Recall, which is, oh boy, this is a hot mess of a video game. It's an unintuitive mess of a title. Like, you just randomly get grabbed and pulled underground to fight in the sewers, and these guys just jump around. You can't really attack the people that shoot at you. It's just kind of messy and kind of ugly and isn't really fun, if I'm being honest, which was a shame because Total Recall was a hell of a movie, but the video game adaptation, yeah, pass on this one. This isn't one you need to check out. If you have a deep love for Total Recall, maybe you want to buy it just to have it on a shelf somewhere, but this isn't a game you ever need to boot up. Have you played any of these before? Let me know in the comments down below what you think of them. Let me know what you think about the advertisements. Till next time, folks, I've been Jay. Appreciate you spending a little bit of time with me. Remember to play more games, read more comics, and stay square. I'll talk to you soon.